All right, let's get started. I wanted to thank everybody for coming. I really appreciate it. Can you hear me? You cannot?
Not real loud.
Okay, is this better?
Well, it's a microphone for the online, not for the room.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Just shout
Sorry.
it out.
I will shout it out. Thank you for coming, and thank you guys online as well. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time this evening to join us. My name is Glenda Cahoot, and I'm with Shive Hattery. And the district hired Shive Hattery to help them with their bond referendum planning. I want to have the panel introduce themselves now.
Yep. Brent Hazing, I'm the superintendent here at schools. This is my third year here. I moved here with my wife and 3 young daughters. We live in the district. We shop in the district. We go to church in the district. So we're very much Council Bluffs people right now. So that's, and it's great. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and just doing all I can to support not only the school district but the community at large.
Hi, I'm Rob Zimmerman with Project Advocates. We're a owner's project management company, and we do a lot of work in the metro area with school districts and nonprofits and municipalities. We helped with the Council Bluffs Police Department's new building that was finished a couple of years ago. And currently we're working with the development on the riverfront, the Council Bluffs side that was recently announced, that we're building a new climbing wall and elevated walkway. But we were engaged by the district to do an assessment of the buildings. And so we had several people walk through all the buildings and do a physical assessment of the buildings to determine deficiencies and list the deficiencies. We estimated the cost to address those deficiencies and then prioritize them based on the things that needed to be addressed the soonest and things that could wait a little while. And then we worked with Dr. Hazing and his team to categorize those things that need to be addressed to put together this bond package.
I'm Jim Edelman. I'm the Director of Buildings and Grounds here. Fairly new, been here about 2 years, and I've been working closely with Project Advocates and with Brent to try and work our way through these projects and these bond issues.
Thank you. So before we move forward, let's take a look at where we've been. And in July of 22, the district put together a master plan. In October of 22, they hired Shive Hattery to help them do a facilities conditions assessment. And then in November of 23, we went for a $90 million bond. And we were so close. It was 51.4%. And in the state of Iowa, you need a 60% supermajority. Then in December of 23, Project Advocates came on board to work alongside Shive Hattery and start prioritizing projects. Then in March of 24, we surveyed the community and we asked them what they would support for a bond. And that's what informed the direction that we're taking today. So instead of 90 million, it's 30 million to spread out that tax burden. So in June, we received signatures to go for a $30 million bond. And on November 5th, we're going to vote on that. So we get this question a lot. So what's different from the last bond to this one? And the last one I just mentioned was $90 million, and it included that elementary school. But based on that survey, we heard you say we'll support infrastructure improvements. And we'll have some of that money go to the acquisition of the land to someday do that elementary school. And that's at 30 million. Last time, because it was a $90 million bond, there was 2 questions on the ballot. You had to answer 2. This time, because it's not as much, it's a 1-question ballot. And last time it was a $3.60 levy, and this time it's $1. So Dr. Hazing?
What's that? Nope, still got to be 60%. So, yep,
Yeah.
still 60%. One of the things I'll add on here is that's one of the big takeaways that, the district heard was that the community is very supportive of Lewis Central as a district, very supportive.
Yes.
But what shell-shocked them a little bit was the price tag. They said, holy moly, this price tag is huge. We've only passed one bond in the history of Lewis Central's district, and that was back in 1999 when they built the high school. And so to come out and say $90 million, is a huge number. And so the community came back and said, listen, that's too much too fast. What can we do? How can we support, but how can we break it down into phases? How can we take care of our most important needs right now, which are current infrastructures? When you look around our campus here and you go into any of our buildings, you'll see deficiencies in our buildings that it's just time to take a look at. And so the big feedback that we received was take care of what you have, get what you have back up to a level that is safe, secure. We do have to take a look at a lot of safety things. The last couple of weeks have reminded us again how important safety is. And so a secure entrance in the high school, that's something that has been talked about for a while. We need to pull the trigger and get that done. Making sure that we have adequate camera support, making sure that we're up to date on our software so that way we can detect weapons, those types of things. But all of that costs a significant amount of money. And so that was the feedback that we received was focus on safety, focus on security, focus on your infrastructure, focus on HVAC, focus on making sure classrooms are, at the right temperature, focus on making sure that toilets flush and that, we're not getting anything back up into our sewer system. Focus on replacing the parking lots because they're atrocious. Take a look at what we can do to help get the traffic off of Harry Langdon, in which, by the way, I am thrilled to say that the city has done a couple different traffic studies now on Harry Langdon. And in fact, they just reached out to me yesterday and asked where we are anticipating, if we pass the bond and if we redo the parking lots, where we're anticipating adding an entry to the high school, because as they start their master plan for Harry Langdon, they want to make sure they're incorporating that. So that gives me great hope that Harry Langdon will be addressed in the near future. The nice thing about this is I know that was a big concern when we talked about putting another elementary school in the area, because Harry Langdon right now is atrocious. And so this will give the city an opportunity to address that before we ever go back to the community, because we'll have to go back to the community if this growth ends up happening. We'll have to go back to the community and then request at that time to take a look at a new elementary school. But again, it won't be the $90 million, it'll be whatever it costs to build an elementary school. So breaking it into phases, making it so it's more affordable for constituents. An example is last year, an average house in Lewis Central District's $300,000. We said that it was about $494 per year for a $300,000 house at a $3.60 levy. At a $1 levy, it's about $134 for a $300,000 house per year, total. So asking the community for roughly $11 a month versus, $50 a month, that's a significant difference. So we're happy to break it down. We're happy to do anything we can to do what the community is looking to have Lewis Central do, because we are part of the community. So. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay.
Just give us
So why
some-
now? So sorry, I
That's
forgot
all
what the
right.
whole question was. Why now? So infrastructure continues to deteriorate. We're going to have. I actually asked Neil Arbogast to come, and he is a graduate of Lewis Central. I'm not going to be talk yet, but graduate of Lewis Central. His whole family's from here. He does a lot of work on our HVAC. So you're going to hear from him tonight because I can sit here and tell you that I was just in a classroom today for breakfast buddies. And it was legitimately probably close to 80 degrees in there at 9:30 this morning.
78 to be exact.
78 degrees in there this morning. And it's because our HVAC is broken down in different areas, and it's just prohibitively expensive for us and the money we receive on an annualized basis to be able to make big adjustments. So it continues to deteriorate. Costs continue to climb. If we don't start addressing these issues, we're going to have to start using that money that we use for instructional support right now on infrastructure. And so what that means, and we'll talk about it in a little bit, but what that means is simply the money we're currently spending on instruction, computers, software, furniture, those types of things that go directly to instruction will have to be deterred to HVAC, plumbing, etc. We get a vote one time a year. It used to be that we could run bonds about every 6 months. Now we can run a bond one time a year. We can only run a one-question bond this year. Last year we ran a two-question bond. People were asking, what happens if we don't get this? And I said, well, we can't ask for a two-question bond again because that can only happen in odd-numbered years. So we can ask once a year, and then every year the cost for these items is gonna increase approximately 6 to 8%. I mean, we've seen it happen year after year for the last several years. So it's just going to be more expensive. And then I know that as we look further down the road, there's a lot of developments that's taking place in Council Bluffs, which is fantastic. We love to see our community grow because you're either growing or you're dying. I love to see that we're growing. And there's a lot of land being moved. And so as that happens, we start thinking, okay, what does this mean for us as far as homes, as far as students, as far as community members, et cetera? If we got to get our current infrastructure up to snuff, so we can pay off this debt, so that way when that time comes and we're in need of another elementary building, we can go back to the community debt free and say we're paying off debt. Now we're going to look at a school. So, and that will be in, however long it takes to 5, 6, 10 years, whatever that amount is. So.
You
Did I
wanna
cover
talk-
everything?
Yep.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about how you're spending the current budget.
Okay, so current numbers. So everybody knows that we get 1 cent sales tax. So 1 cent sales tax was an awesome thing that the legislature put in clear back in the mid 2000s, and it essentially was a penny tax that was supposed to go. All that revenue was supposed to go directly to schools for infrastructure. Now, over the years, they've started siphoning off little pieces of it and kind of putting it toward public parks and water and different things. So really, we don't get that full penny anymore. We get, approximately 80% of it. Between our PEPL, or physical plant and equipment levy, which we do have a $1 levy in that right now, we have approximately $2.3 million comes in, and that's what we use on a yearly annual budget. And I'm a big budget guy, and so when I look at budgets, I look at, where do we need to spend the money? Student technology, $400,000 is what we spend on that every single year. A Chromebook is approximately $360, and we buy 800 of them on an annual basis, so about $340,000 worth of Chromebooks that we use on an annual basis, and then another $60,000 or so in other student instructional money. District technology, that's money that goes into like our infrastructure, our cameras, our Wi-Fi, staff computers. That's about $250,000. Transportation, $400,000 on an annual basis. To give you an example, we bought 2 buses. If you purchase a bus right now, it takes 18 months for the bus to be finished. So we bought 2 buses back in May at a cost of $170,000 a piece, $168,000 a piece. And they are I mean, they're not bare bones, but there's no air conditioning. I mean, they're just your typical buses that you see roll down the road on any given year. But because of the safety requirements in Iowa, the price has become, astronomical. And when I was in Missouri Valley, you could buy a brand new one for about 110 or 115, and then they've done things like add seat belts and add cameras, and those are all safety things, are all fantastic, but it does drive up the price. So we bought 2 buses for $168,000 a piece. We have a fleet of 28 buses, so even if we replace 2 buses a year, our buses are 14 years old by the time we rotate them through, and that's just replacing 2 buses a year. Equipment maintenance, Jim has a budget about $150,000 a year that he can do on equipment and maintenance type items. Furniture, we spend about $100,000 a year in furniture. That sounds like a astronomical amount. However, we have, approximately 180 classrooms across the district. And so when you're talking 180 classrooms across the district, to replace furniture in a classroom of 25 or 30 kids costs between $4,000 and $8,000 between what they need. If it's science equipment, it's like a $20,000 expenditure. So that money we have to do on a rotating basis, and it gets eaten up super quick. And we still have classroom furniture, even on a rotation, that exceeds 20 years old, 20, 25, 30 years old. I've had people that have done tours at the middle school, and we'll offer a tour at the end tonight if you'd like. And they're like, this is the same furniture that I sat in when I attended here in 1994. And I'm like, yep, it's the same. Good stuff. So back when they made stuff out of real steel. So unfortunately, Jim's had to weld it about 9 or 10 times, but it's still clicking. And then about $1.1 million in district-wide projects. These are everything from HVAC projects to pavement projects, sewer, electrical. I mean, just things. I mean, we have a large campus. We have 6 buildings, 4 attendance centers. I mean, it just takes a lot of money to get things going. So that's one of the things when we talk about, like, for instance, to renovate 1 bathroom at the high school. We renovated the 2 bathrooms at the high school, just in the commons area, to renovate each one of the bathrooms. And we didn't do anything with the plumbing fixtures, nothing. We just took the plumbing fixtures as is. It was just tile, painting. We did sinks, counters, those types of things. It was $196,000 total by the time it was done. 2 bathrooms. And we had multiple bids. We went through a bid process. I was shocked. I could have sworn we're going to do both bathrooms for $100,000. Now, they're huge bathrooms. How many stalls are in there, Joe? Probably. There's a lot, But still, I mean, it's astronomical. So that's kind of where the money's going right now. So that's when people talk about money left over at the end of the day, there's not a lot. We make sure that we carry forward about $200,000 a year, because then we'll have big projects that we have to plan for. We have to plan, for instance, that our track has to be resurfaced and at the end of 2026. That's going to be about $160,000. We need to be able to plan for large HVAC units that are going to go out. We need to be able to plan for pavement restoration. We need to be able to plan for big projects and be able to respond when Jim tells me that we have $80,000 worth of sewer bills to pay, because somehow our drain water system got plugged into our sewer system, and then it was a mess. But so things like that we have to be able to respond to. So we do have to have a nest egg kind of there to be able to pay those bills as well, so we don't have the middle school just full of sewage. So, I mean, yeah. I don't know if you'd notice the smell any different than like middle school kids in general, but like it's pretty bad. So.
All right. You guys put a lot of thought into how to prioritize if we do get this money. So, Rob, can you walk us through your thought process on each one of these goals?
Yeah, so we categorized all these items into 3 main goals. One is to remodel, the second is to improve, and the third is to replace. And I'll walk through examples of what we're looking at in each one of these categories. With remodeling, what we're looking at is, not making improvements, just trying to upgrade or update things and bring it up to today's standards. So one item that we've got is $1 million in general renovations to educational environments. So those types of things are carpet, ceiling tile, just general renovations to where the kids are learning. The next is updating electrical systems district-wide. There's panels that need to be replaced. Some of the electrical systems were installed and they just wear out, and it's time to replace those electrical systems. So this is more of a safety item. Like Dr. Hazing mentioned, the plumbing systems, replace the aging, failing plumbing systems in each building. In this building, there's actually a sanitary sewer pipe that goes under a hallway, and it's got a belly in it. And so it doesn't drain properly, and that creates a backup and odors, sanitary sewer odors in the building. So it's addressing just some basic infrastructure items with plumbing. And then the last big item is $6.4 million in renovating this building, the middle school. And you might ask what needs to happen here. It's not really putting on additions. It's addressing items that are hanging out there that maybe code has changed. We look at accessibility differently than we did when the building was constructed. There are a few parts of the building that someone who has challenges with mobility cannot get to easily. Maybe they can get there on a lift, but what would normally take about 2 minutes to walk or take the stairs, it could take them 20 to 25 minutes to get between areas of the building. And those are just things that we need to address and make sure that the building's accessible to every student or every person who may have a mobility issue. And then and just bring some of the areas up to date. One area that was I'll say shocking to walk through were the locker rooms in the gym. And I think we've got a picture here in the upper right where you see the toilets just open in the locker room area with no partitions, and I would assume they rarely get used
Right.
because of that issue. So just in this building, just making renovating the building and bringing it up to comparable middle schools in this area. The second goal is to improve. So these are things they're going to make the facilities better. And one, Dr. Hazing mentioned the security. One standard that all schools have now is a secure entrance. And what that means is when you walk in the main entrance to the building, you have to walk through the office to get into the rest of the building. So in the morning, when all the kids are coming at once, the doors are all open. Those entrances are monitored so you can see who's coming and going. Once everyone's in the building, the doors are shut and you have to get buzzed in. So if I want to come visit and bring a lunch or bring something or visit the building, actually this happened about 2 years ago. I was at a wrestling meet at the high school, and I forgot my notebook in the bleachers, and I had my phone number, and they called and told me it was in the office, so I came to pick it up. Well, I get to the front door, and they buzz me in. I walk in the front door, and then I have to turn and then walk in through another door to get to the office to talk to them. That's not standard anymore, because once I'm buzzed in the front door, I could get anywhere I want to in the high school. And that's just by someone hitting a button and letting me in. So the new standard is we create a vestibule where I'm forced to go into the office, and then once I'm in the office, they can push a button to let me into the rest of the building. So if I come in the office and I look grumpy, or if I look like I'm there to do something not good, they can contain me and keep me in the office without access to the rest of the school. So that needs to be done at Kreft and the high school. The technology district-wide, that deals with security cameras and updating the infrastructure for the technology system, and just all things that need to, again, bring that infrastructure up to date.
And there's, when you talk about safety, like there's also for instance, I just met with the safety company that we use frequently for our security cameras, and their recommendation for us is to put contacts on every door, every exterior door. So a lot of times when you see safety issues within buildings, it's because people are propping doors open, or they put something in a door that creates an opportunity for somebody to get in. It's not the front door usually, it's the other doors. And so by installing contacts that then report back to the building administrators what doors are open, what doors are propped open. You know, they'll get an alert now that says, you know, the weight room door is propped open. You know, so, but all that is, to be able to do it right is you know, and make sure it's consistent and it's hardwired in, and it's, you know, not something that anybody can access from the outside. You know, it's pretty cost prohibitive as far, you know, as when we try to do this. That's why trying to build in as many of those items into this bond is something that's kind of top priority for us, to make sure that we truly have a super safe building. I'll tell you right now, they had 16 doors down at Kreft that are not that don't have any sort of contact on them. There are about 13 at Titan Hill. I think the high school has another 14. Middle school here has the majority of the outside doors. And so, like I said, they're locked down. I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, they're not safe. They're absolutely safe. They're locked down. But you have that many doors. You have 22 doors at the high school that are exterior doors. Any one of them can be propped open at any time. And so being able to be notified when they are, you know, helps our team then make sure that those are, you know, being locked down at all times.
Another item we looked at was LED, replacing lighting in the buildings with LED. We actually did a survey of all the buildings, of all the lights, and somebody counted all the light fixtures and priced it up. It's interesting over time. If I were talking to you about 15 years ago, we would have said, well, LED's too expensive. Why would we do that? Well, the price points come down so much that LEDs, at least the same price as other lights. And we did a study to show a pretty short payback on the cost savings, even from going to fluorescent lights to LED. And so it's not going through and doing fancy fixtures and decorative things. It's simply replacing these 2x4s with an LED 2x4, and that pays off pretty quickly. And there's also incentives that we've researched through Mid-America and other places where there are incentives to help pay for that. So it makes sense for both light quality and also energy efficiency. And then the last item on the improvement is putting funding towards acquiring the land for the future school.
Yep. So, and that land will be located, it's right over here, kind of where the old operations building is, across the way. So we actually, the district board has voted to purchase a portion of that land, so that runs right along the road. So developers can't jump in and say, oh, we're going to get it. So the rest of the land, though, we just don't have the capital to be able to purchase the rest of the land that we would need to do future development. So a portion of the bond would be put towards finishing the acquisition of that land. I did want to make, I had a question earlier, and I'm going to address it now. Somebody had emailed me and said, you know, what about the land at the water tower? Why was that land sold? It was, you know, it was donated to the school along with a large sum of money. You know, why didn't the school utilize that land by the water tower? Luckily for me, I still have access to Dara Weilich, who's been on the board, I think, since, I don't know, cars were developed or something. So he's been around a long time. So I called Daryl and I said, what can you give me the story? And what I thought was going to be a 5-minute answer turned into a 20-minute answer, which is probably what I'm giving you guys right now. And basically from what he said is that land was actually acquired by the school. It was never donated to the school. It was acquired by the school in 1974 through the, I'm gonna misspeak now. What's it called when you condemned through the condemnation process? So they condemned the land. The school purchased the land to be used as an elementary school. Between 1974 and 1991, when he got on the bond, they had done several research studies with different architects that determined that land would never be suitable for an elementary school. It wasn't big enough. It required too much dirt work. It was going to be cost prohibitive, et cetera. So between that time, when Daryl got on the board in 1991, they were already talking about selling the land. And then in 2017, they ended up selling the land, and they sold it for $600,000. However, when you sell land that was formally condemned, first right of refusal goes to an heir of the land. So an heir stepped forward and said, I'm going to take first right of refusal. Essentially, a deal was brokered between the district and this individual to essentially split the proceeds. So what the school netted on that property was $300,000. What the rumor is out there was that land is worth millions, which it might be now, who knows, between 2017 and now. It was worth millions, and there was also a large sum of money that was donated to the school along with the land. There was never any money. If anybody knows of $9 million that was donated out there, please let me know. We could use it right now. And that land was never donated to the school. It was actually acquired, purchased by the school through the condemnation process. So just a quick, it was kind of interesting. I just had that as I came in here. So we actually don't own any land. The money that was made from the purchase of the land, about $300,000, along with the $500,000 we got from, or the school got from purchasing or from selling the old operations building, was actually used to purchase the land already that is in the new area. So that's where that money is. No additional, no 9 million, no more donated land. So never was.
Okay, the third category is replacing items and systems. And one thing when you build a new building or own your home or own a commercial building, there's some pretty big things you need to take care of. One is to keep water out of your building. You don't want any water damage. The other is comfort. You need air conditioning and heating. And so it's addressing a lot of these fundamental items that just need to be replaced. And I like to give the analogy with a lot of these systems that when we talk about the mechanical systems, at your house, your furnace has a useful life of probably 20 years. And after 20 years, I would be ready to, I'd save enough money to replace it because it's going to fail probably in the next 5 years or so. But you don't replace it when it turns 20. Usually people like us will wait till it dies, and then it probably dies on a hot day in August, and now you're scrambling. But you expect that. That's how this has been managed, and it's wise. It's a wise way to manage your money to squeeze every day of useful life out of those systems. But eventually, you do need to replace them, and so that's what we're looking at with a lot of the mechanical systems, the HVAC, the valves and controls. One thing, and this relates to safety. One question we ask when I walk up to a building and I see a lot of doors propped open, the answer I get is they prop the doors open to get fresh air from the outside into the building. And so one way to address safety and to keep people from propping doors open is to have an HVAC system that keeps it comfortable, and they don't need to open the doors to get air from the outside. And it's usually, we call them the shoulder seasons, which would be spring and fall, where one day it's beautiful, but the next day you might need heat, the next day you might need to cool the space, and so it's hard to regulate those seasons. So that's one item, the mechanical systems. The other thing I'll mention about this is at the high school, one challenge we're addressing, and we've started addressing it with some of the maintenance funds, but we really want to complete this, is to get good management of the control systems. So the way the high school's been operated over the years, just because it was the most cost-effective way day one, is it's basically like at your house, setting the thermostat to 74 degrees and you press hold and you just leave it. And that's the way the high school's been run for a long time. Well, you can buy smart thermostats now, and think about that on the scale of a commercial building. And so that's one thing we're installing is the ability to set up schedules. And so when the building's unoccupied, maybe it's during winter break, we can bring the temperature down. You don't want to go too far down and cause issues with pipes freezing, but it doesn't need to be heated like you do when kids are in school. And that'll allow us to, one, keep it more comfortable throughout the year, but also save money with energy. And maybe at this point we can talk about some of the mechanical
Neil, are you
things.
willing to say a couple words on behalf of, I'll move that microphone over to you.
Hey, Neil, as you start, one thing you might do is explain occupancy in a commercial building is a little bit different than residential. I mean, some of that stuff runs 24/7, fans, everything nonstop. So,
Well, I've been working in every building in the district here for a while now, just taking care of emergencies, really. And it's kind of amazing the things that's been found in the last couple months. it's not so much the age of the equipment, but our biggest problem right now is Titan Hill. The heat pump loop has never been adequate since it was installed. And now it's 14 years later, and we're still fighting the same thing. And that is damaging the equipment. And you just take care of some rooms, and the next thing you know, you're taking care of the same rooms again in other rooms. And we need to get that heat pump loop solved first.
What other areas, you know, we talked about Titan Hill. How would you say the condition of the other buildings? I mean, I know that you were down at Cref some last week or 2 weeks ago. I know that you're constantly at the high school even now. The middle school is kind of a continuous one. I think you basically work full time for us, I think, right now, so.
It sure seems that way. A lot of it is, I don't know if it's maintenance issues, but the heat pump loop at Creft is contaminated. It's quite dirty, and that's plugged up everything. So, like in the nurses area, there's 2 units side by side, and those strainers were plugged. And even after those were cleaned, the coils are plugged. It's just, there's a lot of equipment out there and needs attention.
Maybe one thing that people won't understand is most of our systems are water source or glycol. So those units circulate glycol through them, and as strainers or coils become plugged, that glycol can no longer circulate, and that causes problems on the refrigeration side, which affects your cooling and heating cycles.
Or like Titan Hill, it is circulating, but you can't get rid of the heat. Right. Or in wintertime, you can't gain the heat.
What would you say if you had to put a round number to it? You know, if you think about the percentage of systems here at, you know, throughout our buildings, you know, if you're going to do it right, you know, would you say it's a pretty sizable percentage of our systems that we currently have throughout the buildings that you would say need to be replaced at this point in order to gain efficiencies and, you know, basically to have some, not having to spend as much money on you, so.
Well, I would say not so much replacing equipment, but making some changes and giving some of the units some time going through them, getting them up to par. Like today, we just found a big unit at the high school that it has 2 circuits. One of them's totally flat, no refrigerant. The coils are leaking, and that's 2 years old.
Yeah.
Probably 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Just out of warranty though, huh? Oh yeah, that's what you gotta love about it, so. So yeah, I mean, it's just, we're just constantly, I think the story here is that when it comes to mechanical systems, I mean, that was one of the things when Jim started right after I did, and I think ever since Jim started, that's one of the constant conversations we're having, and it's something that any of our staff members can validate because, or parents that go to our buildings, because you know that when you walk into the high school gym in the summertime, when it's slippery and wet and there's condensation everywhere, you know that there's something wrong. You know that when you're in room 802, Miss Devine's room today for breakfast buddies, and I'm busting a bead like no other at 9:30 in the morning, like something's wrong. You know, like that's, and it just creates an atmosphere that is hard for students to perform in. You know, my daughter goes to, in her classroom is really hot too, but she brings a sweater every day because she sits right next to a fan, and she's in 3rd grade, so she sits right next to a fan. So sometimes she says, I'm so hot I can't even think, and then other times I'm so cold I can't even think. So she's going back and forth just even in the one classroom. So, and you know, that's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here is not necessarily making everything brand new, but making everything work, you know, and making everything so the classrooms can be room temperature at a bare minimum. So
One thing that we discussed with Jim was having a spreadsheet so you know what equipment's out there, what's been done to it, what needs to be done to it, to keep track of it.
And that's one of the reasons we brought Project Advocates on board, is because he can help us, or they can help us. They're tasked to help us get all that squared away, so.
Yeah, that is kind of part of it's part of the nature of the beast here. There's so much equipment that has so many problems that sometimes you put out a fire to just get it working for the day, but then you're on to the next thing, and it never really gets the attention and repair and maintenance that it truly needs. We just don't have the manpower to keep up with it, and and then it gets, you lose track of it over time. And so we just need to find a way to track those things and get back and actually go through those units. There are some, for example, our units that are in our classrooms at Titan Hill are fairly old, but we've come to realize that they're also fairly well built. If we could go through and do a serious maintenance and replace some components that have been damaged due to this high loop temperature or extremely low loop temperature in the winter that we're dealing with, those units, most of them probably wouldn't.
But the only way to truly solve the problem is to expand the loop.
Yes, well,
You know,
or create a mechanical solution
Right,
instead
yeah.
of
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thanks, guys. I want to monopolize all the time with mechanical.
Sure. The next big or area is the structural systems, and this is things like tuck pointing brick. Again, looking at the envelope of the building, doing whatever we can to keep water from getting through the walls. So there's some EFIS that needs to be repaired, brick tuck pointing, flashing, some of those kind of items, and then roofs at the high school, middle school. We've already started replacing some of the roofs over the summer. We replaced the roof over the gym and some other areas in that vicinity, and it makes a huge difference. And then the next item is playground equipment. At Titan Hill, we just need to add playground equipment for the number of kids in the school and that are out at recess. It's just not big enough to handle that many kids on the playground, and having a variety, and back to accessibility, having equipment that kids who have mobility issues can access and play with their friends outside. The last item is parking lots and entries at the middle school, high school, and Titan Hill. You look at the high school parking lot, and I'd say, to me, that's not just a maintenance or a luxury item, it's a safety issue. When you look at, when we were replacing the roofs this summer, we had to park some equipment close to the roof, and it sank so far in the asphalt and created issues. We had to replace sections of the parking lot just from road-worthy equipment or road-worthy vehicles that were just sitting there. So that it needs to be updated so we don't have dangerous conditions where people are going to trip walking into school or driving by and hitting potholes and damaging vehicles or creating accidents. So if the bond passes, we've looked at several scenarios, and we're confident, and we think that these issues are important enough that need to be addressed quickly, that we've looked at tackling these in over 2 years. Now you'll see what would happen is we'd have to get after it pretty quickly in the fourth quarter of this year, and have about 6 months of planning and designing and putting all these projects together. And then some of the projects would be done over the summer when the kids aren't in school, but some of them would need to be phased and completed during the school year just to get everything accomplished. But the goal is to take this and address it pretty quickly. The need's there. Let's take advantage of a good market right now and pricing, avoid escalation of pricing as much as we can and just get it done.
So how much will this cost me? Again, I kind of alluded to this earlier. The price of the bond in general should tell you that it's going to go down, from what we were talking about last year. Last year, the board and the community committee we had together, they brought to the community a proposal to look at $90 million for an elementary school. There we go. I'm going to back up just a little bit so people online heard us. So when I talk about this one, we're going to talk about how, just in general, the plan's different. So the board and the community committee and administration and Shive Hattery, they proposed, as a group, proposed to the community a $90 million bond that would be new elementary school, middle school addition, and infrastructure. The community, that one didn't pass. And so the community, the feedback is we got to go lower. We got to break it down into pieces. We got to make it more affordable. And so $30 million takes care of our infrastructure. So again, this spring, based on the community survey with feedback from our community group and our board, they went forward and looked at a $30 million bond for, so 30 million versus 90, you know the price is going to be cut down. If you look at the table that's in front of you, again, if that includes some residential property, commercial property, and agricultural property, those are updated. One of the things you'll see is that the rollback, and I think that's one of the things that, depending on where you live, it seems like if you lived in the city, you saw your taxes go down a little bit. If you lived out in the county, you saw your taxes go up a little bit. So it just kind of depended on what the valuation did for you. For some people, we had this conversation last time. I talked to an individual who lives in the city. His taxes went down $1,400 a year. My taxes went down about $500 a year. I've talked to other people, though, that their taxes have gone up, $600, $700, $800 because their valuation went up. Nothing to do with increase in taxes or anything else anybody was doing, is because their valuation went up that they have to pay more taxes. So it kind of depends on where you live. These numbers right here, and we actually have a tax calculator if you go to the next one. You can go to this tax calculator. You have to, it's a Google spreadsheet. You can just plug in your valuation of your house and you'll get a real number. I know last year when we were having this conversation with people, there was all sorts of numbers being thrown around. My taxes are going to go up $2,500 a year. And then when I look at their house, where do you live? They show me the house, their valuation's about $300,000. I say, well, actually your taxes go up about $500 a year. And they're like, nope, I was told $2,500. And so when I gave them the calculator, they were able to go in and compute it and say, okay, that makes more sense. So the calculator is out there for all to get. You can get it on our bond website. And it just gives an opportunity for anybody to look up their valuation of their house and to figure out, what am I actually going to be paying? And so, again, for an average household in the Lewis Central District, $300,000, it's about $134 a year is what you'd be paying. If you have $100,000, let's say, I don't know if $100,000 properties exist anymore, let's say $150,000 property, you'll pay a total of $64 a year for this. Again, estimated payback right now is 5 to 6 years because our district is growing at such a rapid speed. One thing to note that I want to pass down is that if we were in, let's say, a neighboring district around here that's predominantly residential, we would be paying as much as 90%, us residents would be paying as much as 90% of this bill. Lewis Central has so much large industry in the area because even though you might tiff a company from coming in from paying property taxes or whatever to the city or whatever it is, they have to pay on a bond. So all of these shopping centers, everybody in the area, all these large businesses, even though they're tiffed, everybody pays. So large corporations in our district will pay 52% of the bill. Residential pays 48%. If you lived in a neighboring community, you'd pay as much, the residents would be burdened with as much as 90%. And so even if this bond goes up, and we can probably, I guess, I'll wait. So that one's coming. So I'll cut it short right now.
All right. Dr. Hazen,
Yep,
I think you alluded to this earlier, but just talk about that one more time.
Yep. So if you go to the next one, if the bond passes, what we currently use money for, student Chromebooks, classroom furniture, instructional software, new buses, all that stays with those categories. If the bond doesn't pass, we have to start having some hard conversations because these problems aren't going to fix themselves, and we're going to be running out of money here, what we have available to fix these projects. So we're going to have to start robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit. And so the board will have some very tough conversations about what do we eliminate? Do we say we're not going to do a Chromebook renewal for a year, which means that we don't buy 800 Chromebooks for our students that are coming into the district or that are moving from building to building? Do we use that money for HVAC? Those kind of questions will have to be had. If you go to the next one. So we'll have to use that type of money for HVAC renovations, portable classrooms, et cetera. And I think that was what a lot of people the last time when I was having conversations around the community. They're like, why can't you use the money to pay teachers more? Well, the thing with property tax in regards to general obligation bond is you can only use it on property that's being owned that's owned by the community. So I can't use it to pay a single person. I can't use it to buy any food. I can't use it to buy. I mean, the only thing you can spend general obligation money on is district property. That's it. And so then people were saying, well, spend it on instruction. I said, well, the problem is if the bond doesn't pass, I'll be spending money that's currently being spent on instruction on infrastructure. It'll go the other way. So let's talk numbers. If you go to the next one. So this is the kind of the history of Lewis Central's tax base. Back in 2003 is 1425. Paid off that high school bond early in 2014, so you'll see kind of a continual drop after that. And then we're down to $10.24 right now, or $10.28 right now. It's gone up 4 cents. That was not our doing, that was the state's doing. So one of the things people have to understand is the state has control over about 80% of our taxes. So they come out based on a calculation of property rich versus property poor districts, how many kids you had, et cetera, what they want to give you for funding. They come out and they set your initial levy, and then it's everything after that's either the result of the board or the community voting on something. But when you look at our levy at $10.28 compared to local districts, and I say this because if my house was located 2 miles, not even 2 miles, a mile to the northeast or northwest of where it's currently located, I'd be in Council Bluffs district, and I'd be paying $15.97 per thousand. Right now in the district that I'm in, I pay $10.28 per thousand. If I were in Creston, they pay $13.71. Glenwood's $14.50. Trainer's $14.25. Underwood's $14.45. Red Oak's $15.09. Those are local, what other people in other areas are paying for property tax in their district. If you look at how we compare with schools in our, let's say, sports district, who we can actually compete against, because we don't really compete against, I guess we compete against those other schools, but if you look at other schools that are our size, 3,200 students in in that realm, you'll look at ADM, Carlisle, DCG, Indianola, Norwalk, Winterset. We play all these schools on a yearly basis in a variety of activities. They're at 1788, 1791, 1870, 1793, 1837, 1590, and we're at $10.28. The reason I bring this up is not because I think we ought to be paying $17.90. I think it's more to explain when people are like, we are overpaying now, to be able to show that, if anything, we're probably significantly under what anybody else in the area is. If this passes, the bond would, or our levy would go up from about $10.28 to $11.28. And so that's something that the board and the community have taken into, or the community committee have taken into consideration when they propose this is, we don't want the taxes to climb. We still want to be the lowest in the area. We still want to be one of the lowest in the state. And they'll continue to be one of the lowest in the state by doing this. If, when the bond fell off in 2014, the board had said, hey, we're going to renew the bond, you probably would have never seen a decline in taxes. You would just stayed steady the entire time. And I wasn't around in 2014, and so were a lot of other people, but would have stayed steady. However, in 2014, when it was falling off, we didn't have the number of issues that we're having now, and so the board said, why ask for money when we don't need it? Let's wait and we'll ask for money when we actually need it. And so that's why they didn't vote to renew. That's why they didn't throw it out to the committee for a vote to renew. It was a let's wait until we absolutely need it, and then we'll ask for it back. So the levy drops, and then they're asking for a portion of it back. It went from $14.25 to $10.25. They just want to see it go up just a little bit, just to be able to get back to whole.
Rob, do you want to talk a little bit about this slide?
Sure. Project's currently underway. So if you drove by this summer and you saw big stacks of insulation, you saw us replacing the roof at the high school. And so that was a big project that was undertaken this summer. Had a great response. I think we had eight or nine bids from around the state, and actually the bids, the low responsive bidder did a great job. we were able to add some more roof area to the work this summer, and so they were able to get more done than what we had initially planned for the money. So that went really well. Tomorrow we have a pre-bid meeting for the high school chiller and HVAC replacement project. We need the chiller needs to be replaced. Just there's nothing, no easy way to say it. It's time to replace the chiller. It's got issues. I think it's amazing that it got through this summer. So it's time to get that replaced. Our goal is to get that replaced before the next cooling season. And then we're replacing the rooftop units over the gym. We're actually changing out the method of cooling that. We're going to take that off chilled water and put it on what we call DX cooling. So it's going to be off the chilled water. That will allow us to better control the humidity in the gym, because we know that that's an issue of humidity in the gym. And it's important in a gym environment for the wood floor plus the occupants to keep that under control. So the project of replacing those air handlers and the chiller, that's going out to bid, or it's out to bid. We'll receive bids in a few weeks there. And then, as was mentioned earlier, we're in the preliminary design process of addressing the issues at Titan Hill and that loop, the heat pump loop, looking at both a mechanical solution or drilling more wells. And looking at the advantages of each option, we've been involved with geothermal systems where you add what's called a fluid cooler or cooling tower that helps adjust the temperature of the loop. That's the mechanical assistance. We did some work at the University of Nebraska where some of the residence halls, they added a fluid cooler to help with that system. Or the other option is to drill some more wells. And so we've been in contact with a couple, actually the company that drilled some of the original wells, and learned a little bit about maybe why the systems, the wells aren't quite as deep as what they can do now. We're doing a project right now for Creighton where that driller is going 400 feet deep. But he also said they've got newer bits. So the issue they ran into at Titan Hills, they got to a certain depth and were hitting rocks, and they just couldn't get through the rock layer, and so they think they might be able to get a little deeper with wells if we go that direction. The other advantage that could bring up is there's current with the Inflation Reduction Act, nonprofits or school districts can get some of the incentives, and so what we're doing at Creighton is we're getting about 40% of the cost of that geothermal system is getting they're getting a check from the government for that 40% of the system. So that's something we're looking into if we did add wells, of getting some incentives from the government to install those wells. So trying to make sure we're balancing the best value for cost and then performance of that system. So sorry, I went deep on that one, but
Thank
just to let
you,
know
Rob.
the kind of research we're doing.
We just have 2 more slides, and then we want to hear from you. Just want to remind everybody, we have 1 more of these community informational meetings, and that's going to be on October 9th, same place, same time. And then we're super excited that we get to do a satellite voting at Titan Hill on October 24th. So that'll make it convenient for a lot of people to show up and vote. And then just a look ahead, November 5th is when we're going to go and we're going to vote. And then we start moving into planning and design if it's successful, as Rob had mentioned. And from June 25 through 31, that's the plan to pay off the bond. So with that, I would like to open it up for questions, live and online. And let's start with Randy.
You brought up an interesting topic called security. What schools aren't secure right now?
That's an interesting question because
Well, you said
right.
you gotta put the stuff in the high school,
right.
and you've gotta put it in, what, Creft?
Well, all the buildings. So when I had the meeting with the security company the other day, we talked about, so all of our schools right now, I would be comfortable in saying that they're secure. We have, every one of our buildings is supposed to be locked down at all times. We have procedures in place to to make sure that happens. We don't have the technology to be able to tell us if it's being complied with, you know, so we can go around and tell everybody you need to close every door, you need to lock every door, you need to, you know, make sure it's closed. We don't know that that's being, you know, like if somebody were to prop open a door at any given time, we don't know that that's happening. So all the doors are locked at the front doors of every building. At the middle school right now and at Titan Hill, when you get buzzed into the building, you enter into a vestibule that you are not able to enter the rest of the building. You have to go face to face with the office in order to have access to the rest of the building. So somebody buzzes at the front thing and we have a camera that we can see them, and this is at all of our entries, and we can see them basically from the waist up, and we'll say, you know, what do you need? What do you need? They're like, oh, I'm just coming in to do this, and they're like, okay, and they let you in. If somebody is coming to be a bad actor and they have something behind their back or they're acting a certain way, if you're in the middle school or Titan Hill, you have to now go to the second level of security, which is to go into the office in order to get checked out. Creft right now kind of has that. They have a window, so you get buzzed in, and then you have a window that you have to check in so we can see. Okay, the high school does not have that. The high school, when you enter in, when they buzz you in into a hallway in the main entrance, you can now go wherever you want. You have to, because it's up to the visitor to take the, you know, 50 steps or so to the high school office in order for us to check them out. Well, if they're a bad actor, they're not going to take the 50 steps to the office. And they've had situations where they've buzzed people into the buildings and they're just gone. You know, they're just like, where did that person go? And not bad actors, but they're like, we got to go check them, you know, track them down. There are people there either to work on something or to drop something off or whatever it is. And so what this would give us is an opportunity to put a secure vestibule on, which would be an addition on the high school, a small addition, to be able to make sure that every person outside of the regular entry and exit times has to check into the office before they're able to go in anywhere in the rest of the building. Again, with the contacts, our main entries have contact systems on it because they have card readers that we have to get in and out of. All of our auxiliary doors, like this one back here, no card, nothing on it, okay? So when we talk about safety and security, it's just an evolution. So back in 2004, when I graduated high school, we had never even, I mean, that was, I think Columbine had just happened a little bit earlier. Like, that was the first time we'd ever actually heard of anything. And back then, we kept our doors open. We constantly had our doors open, like for fresh air. We're coming in and out all the time. Like, it was not a big deal at all. I remember we entered in, all of our high school kids, depending on when you got there, would enter in through the back of the school all the time. That was in 2004. Fast forward to Missouri Valley when I was there in 2010. Well, all of a sudden, there's been several school shootings. Now we lock every door, you know. And now we have security cameras, whereas we didn't have security cameras before anywhere. And then now, fast forward to now, and we've had a lot of instances happen that now require us to like take another look and be like, okay, when we evaluate those things that happen in other schools, other states, what were some of the things that they were seeing, you know? So then we take a look at that and be like, wait, we need to make sure that we're keeping up with the times to make sure that we're keeping our kids as safe as possible. Right now, we just put a camera system into Titan Hill, so we have pretty much everywhere in there covered. Down at Creft, there's not a single interior camera, not one. We have 8 exterior cameras, and I would say 7 of them are almost unusable. And so when you're talking about our tiniest population, and that's why I was meeting with the security company to try to figure out what can we do, how much does it cost to get a camera system down at Creft. The cost to put a camera system down at Creft is almost $200,000 because of all the cable they have to pull, everything they have to do, all the contacts, everything like that. So this is not, I mean, this is all a very pricey endeavor that when given time over a series of, you know, the last 14 years, the school's been able to do this on a regular basis where they've added 10, 15 cameras on an annual basis to get the middle school, the high school pretty covered. Titan Hill is now, but we're kind of sitting here saying with all the recent developments, we need to expedite this a little bit. You know, to sit here and say we have an entire building with no surveillance is not probably acceptable. But we also don't have the $200,000 to say we're going to go plop it in tomorrow.
Do you have any resource officers in the buildings?
We have no resource officers.
Okay.
So a resource officer right now from the city of Council Bluffs would cost the district just under $130,000 a year.
You mentioned people popping doors open or propping doors open. What do you do when you catch somebody who's done it?
Well, I can talk to Mr. Vinchattel.
I mean,
Mr.
are they penalized? You know, you're suspended, you know, whatever. No, you don't open that door, period, bottom line.
Right.
So what happens if, you know, a teacher opens it, a student opens it? I mean, that's one of the schools, what, the one in Texas? That's how they got in, because the door was propped open?
Yep.
So what are you doing if you find somebody who's doing it?
It depends on the situation, you know, whether it's a staff member, whether it's a student, but
So-
you're right. You're right.
You
I
know,
mean,
the door is not supposed to be open, period,
Right.
bottom line.
Yep.
If you do it, here's the penalty, period.
Right.
One, you don't get second shot, you only get one.
right. And that's where the camera systems really help us out, because right now,
So you're gonna
peop-
take a picture of the guy, what are you gonna do when if you identify XYZ person, open the door, now what are you gonna do?
right, that's what I'm saying. If, like right now down at Kreft, if somebody could prop the door open unless we physically see them do it, we have no idea who propped that door open, you know? So that's where the camera systems come into play that allow us to do this. So now we're able to do it like at Titan Hill, middle school, high school. I know that Mr. Vinchattel has addressed this many different times at the school, but you're right. Like the recent situations, we just had an administrator meeting last week in which we sat down and talked about, we have to start holding people accountable for these decisions that are being made that are keeping the rest of the student population, the rest of the population in the school unsafe. I don't disagree with you at all. Like, that's exactly what we have to do. It's one of those things where you get people that are so used to, my car's parked right outside the back door, I'm gonna be carrying something in, I'm gonna prop it, I'm gonna go grab it, I'm gonna come in, and I forgot to unprop it, you know? But you're right, like, that no longer is acceptable. That used to be acceptable. It's no longer acceptable. The nice thing is with some of this new technology that we're looking at, that door, even people, because people will make mistakes, that will happen. And so when a mistake's made, though, like in the high school, Mr. Vinchattel will be notified within seconds that this door is open and propped, and he can go and make something happen. Versus right now, that door could be open all day and we'd never know about it. You know, so that's I don't disagree. I 100% agree with you. Like we have to fix the situation.
Can I address this a little bit from past experience? For those of you that don't know, I was at Underwood for 18 years with their school district, so I had some experience with this and with this technology. We had problems with, especially like kids would go in the weight room, because we sold memberships to our weight room, and they would stick a weight belt in, text all their friends, hey, the school's open. Well, then we also had situations where, one thing I remember that really got the ball rolling on this was, somebody had access to the gym. They allowed access for senior pictures for somebody inside the gym on a weekend over Christmas break. Well, they left that door propped open for multiple days because nobody was at the school. And I mean, I've always had to trap skunks out there, trap raccoons, trap possums, and I have coyotes on video in our school parking lot here. I have a possum just the other night up at Titan Hill. So just those things where they're accidentally left open, that can create problems in itself, let alone a security risk. Then what we did was we started using these contacts. That allowed me to set up each door with an alert system. I could alert the teachers who are responsible for that area, the building administrator, the building custodial staff, and myself via text on each door, specifically to people who are responsible for that door. So the instant somebody propped open that door, and let's be honest, you're right, holding people accountable and getting them to stop propping open the door is the one thing, but the important thing is to know it's open and get it shut. Because if somebody comes in here on the weekend and props open a door out the north end of that high school, it might not be noticed for a few days or at least a few hours. And so now if we're notified, we can secure the building again, and that's really the important thing is getting that building secured.
I think that'd be one of the number one priorities, financing.
Absolutely.
Before the parking lot, before out the other stuff, security is number one.
Yep, that's why I met with the security company already, so that way they are loaded and ready to go as far as with the plan. So yeah, I met with them just on Monday. I met with them at 2:00.
You mentioned that you had a survey of the people and then about the bond issue and all this stuff. Who'd you send it to? I never got one.
We put it on social media. We sent it to all our parents via technology.
What happens if you're not on social media?
See, that's-
How do you notify
Right, and that was hard. That came down to a funding decision because when we talked about, because originally we were going to send out like a multi-page survey with a return envelope that's return postage, and it was going to be something upwards of $7,000 to send out to everybody in the district. And so it came down to one of the conversations that the board had was if we can get a good response based on social media and based on email and those types of things, like that's the direction we need to go. When we started looking at Waterloo and these other school districts that had done mailing surveys, they were getting very, very, very low response
Yeah,
rates.
The very nature of how you did it, you slanted the answers, because the people you talk to are the ones who are primarily involved with students in the system. So you gotta, like, in general, it's a question, what percent of the households in Lewis Central District have kids in the school?
That I do not know.
Because if it's, there are a lot of people anymore who are no more kids in the school, fixed incomes, are you talking to a minority or a majority?
We talk to anybody that will respond to us. Yeah, right.
I never got notified to come to one of your meetings to say, hey, what the heck are you doing?
Did you get our postcards last year?
I got a postcard the other day.
In last year, we sent 5 postcards out.
I got the one because you and I had a meeting last year at the meeting.
Right, and so
I
yeah.
only got one.
Yeah, and I don't know how that works because we sent it to the same list every single time, and the list that we got was from the county. It was a list of registered voters. So the only thing I can do is get a list of registered voters and then send it to the printing company, which we use Firespring. They've done a good job for us. I mean, well, maybe not because you didn't get it. And then they're the ones that do everything from there. I send them a digital file and a list of everybody it needs to go to, and I believe there were 6,800 addresses on it. So and that's pretty much all I can do. I was talking to one individual on the phone, and when I was talking to him, he's like, well, how come I never heard about it? And I said, well, did you, we've been on social media, and I had a story in the newspaper, and I was on the news, and he's like, well, I don't watch the news, and I don't read the newspaper, and I'm not on social media. And I said, okay. I said, well, we also sent mailings out to your house if you're a registered voter. And he goes, well, I moved, so I'm not on that list. And I said, okay. And I said, so how would I reach you? And I said, I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm like literally wondering, like, how would I reach you? Because, social media, news, newspaper. I did 8 in-person sessions like this last year.
Yeah, I remember.
I went to like 6 different smaller organizations, from Rotary to there was the Trailblazers Club. I just anywhere I could go, I talked to. And so I said, so I went to those, about 14 different places. I said, so I don't know, like you as an individual, not you, but this individual I was talking to, I said, I don't know how I can reach you. I said, would it be door to door? If I go door to door, which if we have 7,500 homes, my wife won't let me go door to door because she'll never see me. So, would door to door work? And he's like, well, I kind of live in the middle of nowhere, so you probably would never come out to my house. And I said, then I have no idea how I would reach you, So anyway, that individual, I took down his name and number, and I told him I would call him, and I did. I've called him and I've talked to him, about what the new plan is, and but yeah, I mean, we just do our best, is what I should say. We're not trying to, and that's one of the things that people will say about me is I'm probably overly transparent. Like, I try to make sure that everybody has a firm understanding to the best of my ability. I'm not trying to hide anybody. I'm not trying to slant numbers. Trying to make decisions with the support of the board and the other people on our staff that help us make decisions that are reasonable for the community. If I had sent a $7,800 survey out and I'd gotten back 6 responses, people would look at me and say, why did you spend $7,800 on a survey? As it was, I think we got, what did we get for responses? Was it close to over 300? Yeah, way over 300, I think. So we got pretty good response rate when it came to our social media and that kind of thing, which when you even look at Waterloo and some of those areas, their response rate was lower than what we had. So, and to be honest, the reason it went from 90 to 30 was because we had a lot of people respond that did not agree to the plan the first time. So it wasn't necessarily people popping in and saying, you have a great plan, run with it. I mean, we did have some people like that thought the first one was good, but it was so in the other way of, you need to do something. We support the school systems. We just cannot afford this. That made the board and the rethink the decision to run forward with another, high price, or another, I mean, they're all high price, don't get me wrong. I mean, anything with an M after it is ridiculous, but it's just kind of the world we live in. So,
The gentleman, Mr. Edelman, sounds like one of your problems is manpower. How many more people do you need to get these buildings up to snuff with the crew you've got?
Well, with the crew I've got, it'd be a matter of more hours. I mean, and in my opinion, we're short an HVAC guy right now. We have not been able to hire one. We've had one applicant in 6 months.
not quite, June to now.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just, we're trying to hire staff. We just can't find them. I mean, that's just the reality of the economy right now.
Lack of training or lack of pay or what?
Lack of people. I mean, literally, we've had an HVAC job posted since June.
With an industry standard wage.
Yes, and we have had one applicant.
Have you contacted like Iowa Western or Metro Tech and stuff?
Several refrigeration. Yep.
You can actually, like they're doing with
Trying to find a student? Yes, we have.
pay the bill to get the guy trained. And
Yes.
then so long afterward.
Yes. Yes. We are trying to do all those things, but it just
We've
has.
even been trying to, and this is going to be like even local businesses that we do work with, trying to find highly skilled individuals who are maybe tired of doing the day in and day out of, the labor intensive, stuff that you would find on, as a regular worker, to say, you have any interest in working for a school? Like Neil, wink. So, we've been trying to do a lot of those kind of things. We have had a constant opening for custodial and maintenance providers ever since we got here. And
Yep. Yeah, we cannot fill all of our positions.
just
We
lost
just have not
another
been.
one today.
Yeah.
Well, then I know, one other question I've got, and you're talking about money, and this may have to go back to the school board to do it. Prioritizing. I've heard people talk, I'm one of them. How many people use the pool?
Well, now a lot.
When you say a lot, but not counting the swim team, how many people use the pool?
Oh, so with the Council Bluffs Swim Club, they operate lessons on a daily basis during the summer, and then they also have daily swim team. There's probably anywhere from 40 to 50 kids on a daily basis that come and use
How
the
much does
pool.
it cost to operate that pool?
Brent, you're forgetting that they do PE classes up there.
Yep,
So
PE
every kid in
classes.
Titan Hill at some point uses it.
Yeah, PE classes. We also share with Iowa Western now, so they would be on the hook for 20% of any repairs that we
Because
have.
what I'm thinking is maybe that's one of them, if you're getting a budget time where you need money, what can you, like you and I,
Right.
if we go and somebody raises the price of bread, what don't we buy anymore?
Right.
How much does it cost if you switched out and went like the Council Bluffs and Omaha did, contract your buses out?
We would probably spend more money than we do now. That's a very costly endeavor to
Yeah, 'cause
contract
you got
out.
the maintenance, you got the mechanics, you got the buildings, you got the gas.
Yeah, it's actually more money to contract out. The only reason people do it is because for some people, it's the only way they've been able to operate anymore. So I almost guarantee that Council Bluffs per student expenditure on busing and transportation is higher, and I can actually get that number. It's easy to find. Would be much higher than ours. When I was in Missouri Valley, we looked at doing an external transportation company because I thought we would save money on it. But by the time, and they would buy your buses, they would, do all that kind of stuff. But by the time you paid the wages, because you're not just paying the wages of the driver at $18, $19 an hour, you're paying approximately $30-some an hour because you're paying all of their overhead. And that's where your expense is, it's with the buses and everything else, but it's also with, just manpower. And then, so when we started looking into it, it was going to be about a 20% increase for us to make that move in Little Missouri Valley from operating our own bus transportation fleet to going with a contracted transportation fleet. Now, one of the reasons we almost did it was because we were having a super hard time finding drivers. And that's when we started having when I have conversations with local superintendents, that's usually why they end up doing it. or they're an organization as large as Council Bluffs where you have, you know, a dozen schools, 15 schools, or the Council Bluffs schools, the West Side schools, where you have so many buildings that the transportation department you need to be able to run all of it is just so massive you're not able to manage the manpower. So then you pay the extra 20% because they're able to manage manpower. Right now, we're able to manage the manpower and we're able to stay relatively full with bus drivers. And so at this point, I don't anticipate spending the extra 20% on because the companies that you're talking about, when they buy new buses, they just don't buy new buses and say, well, we're buying the new buses, we're just going to charge you for the drivers. They charge you for the buses. You know, that's all packaged into their fee. So you're still paying 100% of their overhead, you're paying 100% of their buses, 100% of their gas, 100% of their maintenance, you're paying everything, but then you're also paying the company overhead to be for their profit and their management of it. So if you don't have to pay that 20%, then you don't. It's a great question, though.
I'm working on some more for you.
That's fine. No, I like them.
Okay, budgets, again, it's probably school board. Do you have any depreciation plan in place right now for everything that you own? Or an amortization plan in place right now that you're pigeonholing X amount of dollars for your air conditioner? That air conditioner had a lifespan of say 20 years. At 20 years, you got the money to buy a new one. Not having to go back to the pot to say, you know, you quit spending all your money.
Right.
Let's put some aside so that we don't have to go every couple of years. And if you're looking at building a new school, how much you pigeonholing right now to build a new school in 20, 30, or 31 or something like that?
Well, the nice thing is in 2031 or even as early as 2029, we are able to borrow against the 1 cent sales tax again. Right now, we've tapped out on that capacity in order to build the auditorium and the operations building. So they made that decision back in 2017 to build those two buildings, and that's when they did the loans and everything else. And so until, you know, for the next 20 years, as early, you know, as late as 2037, but it's going to be paid off early because of the 1 cent sales taxes exceeding the rate that they thought it was going to be, you know, when they start doing all that. Anyway, they in as early as 2029, 2030, somewhere in there, we're able to borrow against the 1 cent sales tax. So if we hold off on building the elementary school until that time, then the community is not going to be on the hook for the entire amount of right now we couldn't borrow against it. So if they wanted an elementary school right now, the entire $60 million for that elementary school, because that's what it's cost, $300 per square foot. They're the ones that figured it out for us. That was going to be on the backs of the community members if they wanted it now. If you can wait 5 or 6 years and we pay this off, it would potentially be a renewal of the $1 instead of a $3.60 bond, a renewal of the $1, and then we would borrow against the 1 cent sales tax for the other half of it. So that's where the benefit of waiting 5 to 6 years. Now, unfortunately, if 2,000 homes pop up in the next 5 years, then we're going to be very uncomfortable until that time. But again, it's one of those situations where, like you said, I'm a pretty fiscally conservative guy. You wouldn't know that by me sitting here and asking you for $30 million, you know, like, but at the end of the day, like, I'm a budgetary guy. I'm pretty fiscally conservative. And if we can and if we don't need it right now, let's not do it right now. We don't need the elementary school right now. We're pretty full. I mean, we got 26, 27 kids per classroom. That's pretty full, but we can go a little bit longer. So if we can say, let's do our infrastructure right now, because that's what really needs to get done. And then we'll readdress and go back to the community and restart these conversations in 5 years when we're getting ready to pay that off, then that makes a lot of sense. So.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm sorry. All the time.
I got a question for you, because you seem frustrated that you weren't notified since you're not part of the school anymore.
Yeah.
And you're not on social media. How should we notify you, people that are not on social media and you don't have kids in the district? Because I think that is a major problem in passing these bonds, is because you're no longer involved in the school and you don't understand the issues that our school has. And the older generation that's not involved in the school anymore just votes no because all they see is their tax dollars going up, and they don't realize that how much these kids need the problems that they're facing every single day in these classrooms. And we can't get them to these informational meetings because supposedly they're not finding out about them. So how can we let you guys know?
Well,
What do you suggest?
I know for one thing, I came to this meeting because I got the mailer. That mailer that came out, it had the dates for the 3 meetings. You're gonna, that may be the only way to do it.
But we sent 8 out last year, and you said you got 1.
I got the one.
Well, it's
in
5.
fact, that was in
Sent
the
5
paper.
last year.
I think the newspaper, I don't know if the newspaper was even carrying it for it. I don't even know if the newspaper represented today. But, the mail probably is the only way to make sure you at least get to everybody. Now, whether they react to something else again, but at least you get there, come on, come to this meeting, here's what we're talking about here. We're gonna spend your money if you're not careful. So that would be the way, maybe mail them out.
But that's been the challenge from forever. Hello. It's been a challenge forever. It was for the bond issue for the high school, it's the communication, and people are, you can get the letters, you can get the flyers, you can get the information, but look how many people are here. They have to want to come, we can't force them. And so what we do is give the information to the ones we know we can get to, and make sure everyone knows what the facts are, so then they can make the decision when they vote.
Maybe the key might be to go have an interview with the television networks.
And we do have that set up in October. Yep.
Where they actually interview by the,
Right?
3, 9, and 10, whatever, interview, and this is what we're saying, here's the meetings we're coming to, so a lot of people are catching, but believe it or not, people aren't watching news anymore because they don't trust it, so
Okay.
I'd say the mail is probably the only way,
Yeah.
at least you got a crack at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it's also, it costs money.
Yeah. Are you gonna
So-
send a mailer out for the vote?
What's that?
Are sending advertising out for November 5th?
Yeah, so we're sending another one. It'll go out beginning of next week, some Mondays. People get it towards the end of next week. It usually takes about 2 days for development, and then they mail it out. And then we'll send a third one right before, kind of right in the middle of October before the vote again. And each one, it's not just about saying, oh, go out and vote on November 5th. We try to include X amount of information on there, so that way, and it's a postcard because that's the cheapest way to do it, but we try to include some stuff on there to be able to tackle the most pressing questions, so people want to know how their taxes are being raised, they want to know, one of the questions that you brought up, and I think it's a legitimate concern, is when we talk about people on fixed incomes and our older generation and everything else. I was actually in one of these meetings last year, and somebody had asked that question, and it was, another gentleman about the same age looks at him and says, who paid for your kids to go to school? And it wasn't like a mean or anything like that. And the guy just said, here's the deal, like the older generation paid for your kids to go to school. The next generation, the young people right now, when my kids are done in the next, 12 years, I'm going to continue to pay for the next generation to go to school. And the reason you do that is because I want people who are educated to the point where they can come and work for me. They can work for the businesses that I shop at. They can come and fix my house if my HVAC goes down. And we're working with the community now to try to figure out, like, what are the needs in the community? Because gone are the days where we could prepare everybody for a 4-year school. Now we're trying to prepare kids for, like, what does our community need? We just opened a brand new welding shop that was built off of donations from a Doc Rossick over at the Country Club. I can say his name now because his name's on it. But Doc Rossick and his wife have donated the money to be able to put a welding lab. We'll be able to serve up to 24 welders and get kids industry certified, so they can, when they graduate, they can go right out into the working force. So again, to your point of like trying to homegrown your people, like that's what, as a school district, I want people to start looking at and saying, what's the benefit of me supporting the school district? It's because we're sending out people that are going to benefit our community, that hopefully work in the community, that are going to stay in the community, they're going to bring prices down in the community. Because right now, if I want a plumber to come and work at my house, I'm going to pay through the roof because there's not a lot of plumbers around, But you start saturating the market with more plumbers, well, the prices start going down, Sorry, plumbers, if you're out there, I don't want your prices to come down. But anyway, But that's, it's all a return type thing. Nothing drives me more crazy when I go to a place and I pay cash and they can't count the change back to me. I want to make sure everybody can count the change back, But without schools, without education, you don't get any of that. So that's kind of the payback there is and not to say that I'm looking at our older population and be like, you don't want educated people, you don't want anything else. But if you have to find a why, there's a lot of whys out there. It's easy to find the no's. My prices are going up. The whys are more difficult.
May I add something?
Absolutely.
There are many intangible benefits to having a strong school community that we don't realize. And I'm not a real estate agent, but we have one here, and I guarantee you, I'd be very certain the houses in our school district are on the market for less time than surrounding areas and surrounding states, because we have a quality school system. People want to come here to buy a house so their kids can go to school.
Yeah, that's what I bought.
Right, so, but in order to continue having those premiums on your homes and your home value to stay up, we need the school also to continue to improve and to make changes. I'm as fiscally conservative as anybody. We don't ask. We've never asked for a GO bond state that went for the high school. It's not like we're trying to pull a fast one, if you will. These are needs we have. We've had them since I was in school. We haven't.
See, that's my only problem is you had these needs identified back then. Why are they still needs today?
See, that's a question I can't answer, and I don't, and to me, it's a futile attempt to answer because we have the problems and we're trying to fix them now.
Yeah, see, that's the only problem is people have done stuff in the past that are setting you guys up now.
Yeah, we have new leadership now that's trying to fix the problem.
That's what I mean, like for X number of years, people kept voting those
Now,
guys in.
but here's I have a counter argument to that as well, though. Because of the inaction of our community, that's why we have a storage unit on the northeast side of our high school that everybody hates it because we couldn't pass a two-question bond. This same thing happened in '97 when I voted for the bond when I was 18, still as a senior in high school. That was my first vote ever, was for a bond. Because I knew it made sense then and it makes sense now. But we can't keep pushing back. At some point, we have to make a decision. And I like this bond. I think it's the lowest. I think it's reasonable. It's fixing up what everyone's telling us to fix up before we spend more money. Well, give us a chance to work and give us a chance to show you what this team can do. Forget about those in the past, they're gone.
Yeah,
We have people here that are committed to the mission. I mean, I can tell you there's 3 board members, there's many people active in the community and the administration. We're all single-minded, focused on ahead, and we're not worried about the actions of the past because we can't change that.
no,
I just wanted to add.
And I think you'd be impressed about, and that's why I brought Project Advocates on board, because that was my big question too, is if you look back in my history as a superintendent of the district, my whole thing is planning. It's planning, preparation. I'm always looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years ahead. And so that's why when I was working with the board, that's one of the things we talked about was, the need to bring on somebody who can create these amortization schedules for us, that can create these deferred maintenance schedules for us, so we're not back in this boat, that we can know what we're going to be spending money on before we ever have to spend money on it, so we can start setting aside funds to be able to do it. I'm the guy that banned smelly markers because I didn't want to pay $3.49 a pack for smelly markers because I thought it was ridiculous, So like there's not frou-frou stuff in here. In fact, my fear is that by the time we spend $30 million, after you look at the parking lots are going to be that's a pretty visible one. But when you walk in the buildings, you're going to be like, what did you spend on here? And the thing is because we're not tearing everything out, we're not redoing everything. It's going to be HVAC, roofs, tuck pointing, those types of things that you would never see and never know that we did. This room will largely stay the same. I'll probably repaint the doors, or probably ask Jim to repaint the doors this summer because that pink is pretty dated. Like that's definitely like a 1990s thing. I don't know when
one final question.
Yeah.
I appreciate your patience with me.
Absolutely.
What percent are the students at grade level?
At grade level?
Reading, math, science?
Yep, just under 80%. So we're sitting at about 78%, which is What is that? About 9 points above the state average. So.
I'm just curious.
Yeah. So and that's one of the things that I think is surprising for individuals when I talk to them, because they're like, I had no idea you guys are having so many issues because you do so well. Like, Lewis Central has had a reputation for forever, probably since back when Neil, started the school back in the day. So, yeah, a long time ago, that they perform well academically, extracurricularly, in music and in fine arts and in sports. They just do. They do a very good job. And so this is just almost in spite of the conditions that they're being asked to do it in, And so if this doesn't pass, again, we're still coming to school. We're still doing what we need to do. It just is coming back to then you got to just figure out what's plan B. And at
Plan B
some
could be,
point,
how about year-round school? And break it down to quarters, and you do 2 or 3 of them and make it year-round.
that would be year-round school has been discussed. 4-day weeks have been discussed. All that kind of stuff has been discussed. A lot of it comes down to like what is the community used to and what are they comfortable with? Because at the end of the day, even coming to this, I had somebody told me like, wow, this has been your project. And I'm like, this is not my project. Like, I came in here and based on the feedback from community members and teachers and parents and, that's in the board, this is something that has already been in the back of people's minds, been developed for a long time. I'm just kind of I'm like the cat wrangler a little bit, like, okay, well, let's just kind of get this idea, and then we're going to give it out. So, to your point, like, I don't even remember what I was talking about. What was your question?
Year-round school.
Year-round school. To the point, like, even those types of things. My job is not to make those decisions. My job is to take those ideas, research them to the point where I can be able to provide some information, and then if it makes any sense at all, to then propose them to either to the community or to the board or to the staff to make a decision. I'll give you a great example. When I got here, I questioned, why we did trimesters at the high school, because we did trimesters. I've never heard of trimesters before. Only one other school in the entire state did trimesters, and they had a lot of really good reasons for it, like a lot of really good reasons. But then as we started looking into it, we were having some issues with connecting with the community college because our schedule did not align with community college. So kids were not really able to attend courses on campus. They did, but not in large numbers, et cetera. And so I just challenged them to take a look at it and just said, take a look at it, see if it's the best thing we can do. And they did. They spent a solid year looking at it, and they came back at the end with a recommendation to go to semesters. So next year we're going to go to semesters because we're better aligned with community college. And at this point, that's one of the directions that we're going, is trying to make sure that every kid has a game plan for after school. And we have a lot of kids. I was talking to a kid my first year here that when I introduced myself to him as a senior, and I said, what are you going to do when you graduate? And he said, well, I'm going to go become an electrician. I'm like, awesome. I said, are you doing electrical classes at Iowa Western right now? And he looks at me and goes, there's electrical classes at Iowa Western? And I'm like, well, yeah, there are. And so on top of that, on top of the moving to the semesters, the high school and the middle school guidance counselors have tackled a huge project in making sure that they are physically in person, touching base one-on-one with every single student to make sure that they understand what's available to them and what's being offered and what they can do, and so that way they know that thing. Never again will I walk into a high school hallway and hopefully and say, what do you want to do when you graduate? And they're like, I want to be a plumber. Are you taking the plumbing classes at Iowa Western? I want them to say, absolutely. Or I want them to say, no, because I didn't want to drive over there. Okay, well, at least you knew they were there. So that's kind of the direction we're going. But those are all things that have just been kind of rumbling around. But it takes a good team, and it takes good leadership. Board's been awesome to work with, and it takes a community to help to organize all of it and bring it together and make the decision. So I will never make a decision to that magnitude of year-round school. I work year-round anyway, so it would absolutely not hinder me at all whatsoever. It'd be like the same. In fact, having 3 months in the summer of no kids gets kind of lonely. So I'd be fine with it, but that will never take place unless the community says, yeah, we're good with it. So.
If you want to ruin a school district, go year-round when no one else does in the area.
Right, you have to do what the state does too. I mean, we tried flipping the high school, went later in the day, and the elementary went, I didn't do it, but when my kids were in school, they flipped it. So high school went later in the morning, and elementary went at 7:30 in the morning, and it lasted a year, and they went
Can I have you attend the next meeting too? I like all these questions. These are good questions. I like them.
Actually, like, I got just one more.
Yeah.
On your chart, where you compare tax computer things,
Yes.
this one right here.
Which one's that?
Uh,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, all the cities, all the school districts you list, have cities in them,
Right.
except Lewis. What's the status on Tri-Center? They're more of a rural too.
They're more of it. Like I try to get either direct and kind of like because like the closer you live to a metropolitan area, which is actually the Omaha area, the Council Bluffs area, the more access you have to housing and those types of things. Tri-Center is a little bit different because they're, like you said, they're not necessarily like a community-based school, but they're not next to any rural area. But I will believe that their taxes are somewhere in the realm of like $13.40 or something like that,
So
which would
they'd
be
low too.
$3 above where we're at right now, and even if it passed $2 above where we're at.
I'm just.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, you
Oh,
draw
yeah.
the chart,
Oh,
I
for
just read
no,
what's
no.
in your chart.
Yeah, no, you're great. No, I really appreciate it. Usually we come to these things, I'm like, do you have any questions? And it's like crickets. So it's great.
Yeah, Bubba, you're kind of quiet tonight.
I'm quiet today, I'm just listening.
Bubba's
Please
the
ask-
only one that talks usually. So
Please ask.
This is great.
I guess I just have a question for you. Do you have any kiddos at all, or? Do you have any kids? at
Yeah.
all? You do?
You graduated from here.
From Lewis Central. So I'm just gonna read off a text message that I got the other day during the situation as far as from my daughter from the high school. And, this text message, it says, I'm scared, Dad, and we're having a lockdown today. And that's all that everyone is talking about. We're getting threats. The shooter is supposed to be here tomorrow during the pep rally, things like that. So I guess my question, to you is that worth $11 a month to prevent something like that? Cause that scares.
I'd say that's the number one expense right there.
Alright, so I side with you
Before
on that.
everything else, parking lots, whatever.
So your guys'
Security
kids are holding
first,
up,
and
yeah.
then we go after everything else.
Okay, but I do side with you, but that's why
Because
I'm here
it's
today.
been, the school down in Texas, somebody left the door open.
Yeah, I heard.
The other ones, I think they're still, or walking through the front door and with the gun.
But is that worth $11 a month, is my question, is to secure the properties?
I'll spend the money for the security.
All right.
I don't know if I'd fix the parking lot, because I just tell the kids, 10th grade and below, you ride the bus, you aren't gonna drive cars.
Okay.
Well, then I need more
But
buses.
that is worth, you're in agreement.
Then I'll need more bus drivers.
Well, I mean, when I went to school,
Yeah.
quote unquote, back when the dinosaurs were running around, they had limits on
Yeah.
how close you could be before you could ride the bus.
Can I actually address that? One of the things, and Rob kind of touched on it, but one of the things is parking lots, one, are used a lot different than they were, right? Right now, we're getting deliveries from commodities. They come in on semis. They come in. We have garbage trucks that come in repeatedly multiple times a week, and we have all the school buses. We're trying to do a roofing project. We had a lift that lifts the material to the roof. That fell through our parking lot in two places.
I'd say that parking lot wasn't designed properly in the first place.
Well,
Potentially.
Because otherwise you would have counted for the fact
Okay.
that, hey, we need an apron around this building for heavy equipment.
Well, it fell through the parking lot where the material was staged, the middle of the parking lot in two places. I mean, it's just,
And I wouldn't disagree with you at all. You even look at our middle school parking lot right here. Like that thing floods anytime we get any sort of any quantity of rain over an inch.
Yeah, I know.
The entire parking lot will flood.
It sounds like the drainage system is screwed up.
And then actually, yeah, and actually that's why the parking lots are so expensive, because a lot of it has to do with drainage. There's a manhole over by the athletic building over there, and we had so much rain the one time it just flooded the parking lot. It actually moved a lot of our asphalt, and it kind of exposed this manhole cover. Well, when they took it out, they called me down there and they say, "Look at this," and the pipe that had run all the stormwater through had busted, and it'd been busted for a long time, like it was just wide open, and then the part where it was supposed to be feeding into had settled, so now was going uphill. So every time but in order to fix it, you got to tear up the parking lot in order to go in and fix all of the runoff, So that's why everything's so expensive. And like I said, maybe when it was designed, maybe it was great. I don't know when the middle school parking lot was put in, maybe in, the 70s. Like maybe it was great back then. But then over time, I mean, it's just been a well-loved parking lot. You look at the amount of traffic that comes in now. We have car shows here. I mean, we have all sorts of people coming in and using it that aren't just school-based activities. We have a lot of
That's what makes a great helicopter landing pad for medical.
It
let me
does.
tell you.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Oh yeah. Oh, I've seen that before.
Fire
Yeah.
department. Yep. We
Yeah.
landed
Lewis
it
Township.
right out there in the middle.
Yeah.
So,
And that's like I said, it's I don't disagree with you when it comes to like different designs, but we also know that things are designed differently now. What was probably really good in the 70s. And I almost say that backwards too, because sometimes I wonder like how stuff in the 70s is still around here when the stuff I buy today breaks down in like a year. So I don't really know, but sometimes the things that are designed in the 70s to last. It was designed to last 40 years. Well, now we're at 50 years. We've just gotten the love out of it.
well, that's why I say the maintenance guys are taking a real hit on some of this stuff. And it's not their fault.
No.
That's why I say, do they have enough manpower to do what they need to do? If they don't, then maybe, your problem is you can't hire them. So,
The reality is if you talk to any school anywhere, manpower is going to be, there's just a limited bucket of money, and you got to go to the education of the kids, and it's just, any school will tell you they're short on manpower, even when they're fully funded.
I think any business will tell you they're short.
Any business will, yep. It's just,
I mean, it's the applicants. We don't have.
yeah, and we are trying to hire more, but, yeah.
I mean, I work, and where I work, they constantly have custodians, HVAC, the facilities techs, all of those constantly have those positions open. And it's the applicant, they don't get the applicants to fill them. It's everywhere,
If anybody out there wants to apply, we'll take you. So
absolutely.
yeah. No, your questions have been awesome. Like,
well,
yeah.
okay, then the key might be, go to Iowa Western and say, you're teaching the wrong stuff.
My golf,
Go to Metro and say, Metro is actually,
yeah.
just to let you know, my son had a choice, Iowa Western or Metro.
Mm-hmm.
Cost to the school, cheaper to cross the river.
Right.
Maybe you gotta look at what Metro's doing. They're not worried about a football field.
Mm-hmm.
They're working about classes.
Right.
Aircraft, drivers, whatever they're doing. Maybe Iowa Western needs to say, cool this on the jets, and let's get some more hands-on type stuff, like you're saying. Carpenters, plumbers, electricians. A friend of mine, he started out 4-year apprentice program. He started out about $15 an hour, and he's probably up to 40 now.
Yeah, I think one of the problems you have is right now, I bet with all the HVAC companies throughout the metro area, they would hire a couple hundred HVAC guys, and you usually graduate a class of 6 out of college. I mean, we don't have that many kids going into the trades right now. I think we're going to see that trend change, but they're not there. They're just not there.
There's the money, not in a 4-year degree. Right. In the 2-year tech school or trade school, he walks out the door and he's got $100,000.
Yep.
So that may be something for long-term to look at. Because I went to high school, we
Absolutely.
had electrical, drafting, woodworking,
Yep.
and automotive.
Yep, and we have all of that. It's just trying to get the next level of like we're just gonna teach you in class. We're now gonna get you industry certified. So that way,
Yeah.
because now before we were relying on kids to then take the next step and go to college and do it. Now we're just gonna give it to you while you're in high school, so that way you can go right in the working force well trained. So.
Good thought, good idea.
But in the meantime, the school has infrastructure needs, it has security needs, it has, we can't solve that. But the community can get together and see what is needed for the school so things can start going in the right direction.
Hey, there's a class for an apprentice program. HB.
There you go.
Take some high school, take some seniors, say, hey, you wanna make, it'd be your assistants run around for an hour or 2 a day.
But we need the equipment because we have such old equipment.
Yeah.
You can't buy parts.
I think, I think to your point, like, I think that there's a balance in everything. Somebody had brought up at the last meeting, you know, when you do playgrounds, are you also going to try to fundraise for playgrounds? Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to try to fundraise for playgrounds too. But if we can't fundraise for the playgrounds, we still got to have a playground, you know? So like, there's things like that as we move forward that your ideas are great. It's the things that we're still working towards. We just want to make sure that we are given an opportunity to put an idea out to the community, have the community vote, and we'll see what happens. So
Thanks for your patience.
you're awesome. I appreciate
Thank
you coming.
you. Thank you, everyone. And Randy, can you do me a favor?
If I can,
Can you tell your friends to come to the next informational meeting?
yeah, I invited, next door neighbor's gonna come, but he's got a medical issue, couldn't make it. But
Okay. Just
Awesome.
share
of
the,
course, the next door neighbor on the other side is a teacher, so he already spoke that quote, knows about it.
Yeah.
okay. Keep sharing.
Oh, it's okay. Good.
Keep sharing.
Well, you got good neighbors then. So
Yeah.
Yeah, his wife's a teacher's aide, and